Right. Right. Yes, it's part of the learning process and testing different hypotheses before you can actually see the results, right?
Yes.
And there is also what I called it's called pilot induced feedback, right? When you're driving an airplane, right, you make a correction and then the airplane uh, you know, takes that correction and then you overcorrect and you keep overcorrecting, right? Because there's a delay between the input and the output, right? And I think with the SDR process, something similar, with the outbound process, something similar happens, right? Because you're doing the process, but you make the adjustment before seeing the results. Then you don't know the outcome came from the first, second, or third attempt, right?
Yeah, it is a bit of a delicate process in the sense like you don't want to, if you're not getting results, you don't want to do it forever. But at the same time, you want to let certain campaigns play out. You don't want to be 1 or 2 weeks in and scrapping the whole thing and starting over. So you have to kind of find that sweet spot of when it makes sense to continue a campaign and when it makes sense to pivot. I tend to think in the 2 to 3 week mark is when you could just start thinking about, whether or not it makes sense to make adjustments.
And how do you keep personalization real in the age of AI?
That's tough. I mean, at this point, it's almost like most people are assuming everything's AI written. So you need to stand out. I think it depends on where exactly. Are you writing LinkedIn posts? Is it specifically from your outreach campaigns? Emails probably where you need to make the biggest effort. If it's a phone call, I mean, you're having a conversation. That should be pretty easy. That shouldn't be AI. In fact, AI cold calling in the United States is illegal. So you should be able to get around that pretty easy. But when it comes to like LinkedIn posting or email outreach, that's where you have to try to be creative in standing out. And that's not easy, right? So how can you make it sound human-like or more natural? I know this sounds really easy and lame, but like don't use M dashes. That's what ChatGPT tends to use a lot in their writing is the M dash, that long dash. Remove those. It's very simple. And in general, I think the best way to stand out is to make human connections. Like we were talking about before we started recording. Go on podcasts, go meet people in person, go to local events, go to conferences. And so I think the more relationships you can build, that will help you stand out in the world of AI.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with, social networks are supposed to help us connect with people, but they actually make us, more isolated. And the same thing happens with AI, on this topic that every time I get a cold email, I assume it's AI generated, right? And then, the content has to be really good or really, personalized for me to actually, pay more attention, right?
Yeah, agreed.
So, what was the hardest challenge that you had when you become a founder?
I think being very isolated, you don't really have anybody to turn to when you're first starting out, if you don't have a co-founder, and shaping the company and knowing what to do when you're on your own, especially during COVID, which was even harder. Right. So that is the challenge. Now, luckily some things fell my way and things started working out. And then I had some past relationships I was able to work off of. And I continued to build relationships on LinkedIn, which helped with getting more sales. But that was the biggest challenge for me is like every step of the way is not having necessarily someone to turn to who has done it before. Now I have a coach who has done it before. So I'm able to talk through certain situations I'm facing and how he would approach it or how he's dealt with it in the past.
Right. Yeah, I think that having a coach and a support system becomes much more relevant. And the more you grow, the lonelier it becomes, unless we seek out for mentors, coach, or other peers that are in the same similar situation than us. Right?
Yeah.